Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and allowing First Financial to present to you Fraud Trends. We did do an acronym for fraud, which stands for Financial Responsibility Against Unfortunate Deception. So, a little introduction of myself. My name is George Young. I'm a BSA, which stands for Bank Secrecy Act, an AML, Anti-Money Laundering Fraud Specialist with First Financial, and I've been with the company since 2019. Today, I hope to discuss with you topics of identity theft, scam types, account takeover, which will cover in-branch, over the phone, and online, peer-to-peer fraud, which covers Zelle, Cash App, cryptocurrency, financial responsibility, and preventative measures. What is identity theft? So it refers to all types of crime in which someone wrongfully obtains and uses another person's personal data in some way that involves fraud or deception, typically for an economic gain. And this was actually derived from the Department of Justice as their definition of identity theft. So I do hope there are some fans of The Office out there, and I hope there are some fans of the dad jokes, because what we did is we took the two and put them together to create this meme of Jim impersonating Dwight's identity. So Jim says, "When I was young, my mom said I can be anyone I wanted to be," and Dwight shouts out, "False, that's identity theft." So of course, identity theft is really not a joke. The reason being is because identity takes a lifetime to build, but only a second to lose. These scammers, they get your identity because they make a sport out of it. So what they're doing is, some of these examples show their shoulder surfing. This is where scammers are actually looking over your shoulder at your device screen, trying to gain information about you. So it could be anywhere from what website you're visiting to your personal data, such as your phone numbers or your banking information. They will go dumpster diving. This is where they're physically going through garbage, looking for unredacted information on documents or documents that are not shredded, any personal information that you can use to then make a profile for you. There's mail theft. So this is where scammers are actually going through your mail. They will steal it out of your mailbox, and they will either look at the document, record the information, put it back, or they'll steal the document altogether. And this is not just specifically towards individual mailbox. This could also have consequences of individuals that are in the mailroom committing fraud as well. Public Wi-Fi. So these are, think of like your Starbucks. When you go in, you use their Wi-Fi network. This is an unsecured network. So there could be scammers using that unsecured network to look at the data that you're viewing when you're connected to the network as well. So I always suggest never use your online banking, personal information, emails when you're on a public Wi-Fi network. And that, again, is because it's public, it's not secure, it's open to everybody, so scammers might use that against you. There are some things like data breaches that are out of our control. So these are when large companies experience a hack, where their information was then compromised and all the information of yours that was stored with that company. With these, we can't really control it, but what we can control are things like oversharing on social media. So if you think about those quizzes where it's like generate your rapper name, and it asks you for your city, and then it asks you for example, your name. So if I put Young Baltimore, and then it generates, oh, your rapper name is Baltimore Young, while it seems harmless at the start, it could be a scammer trying to gain access to my security questions. For example, what city were you born in? This leads into the fish bait, so we call the ishings. So there's three major types. There's going to be phishing, which are your emails, smishing, which are your texts, and vishing, which are your voice calls or voicemails. So when you receive a phishing email, the best practice is report it to your IT department as a phish, if you have an IT department that has a program of that, or simply, if you suspect deceit, hit delete. Smishing are the text messages. The typical best practice is going to be block the number and delete the text. Your vishing, which are your phone calls and voicemails again, best practice is just a hang up. The reason being you don't want to respond to any of these three is because of the fact that then confirms, if you do respond, it confirms for the scammers that that's an active form of communication for you. So they might increase their amount of phishing attempts. They may try different methods. So if they were phishing you with an email, they may now switch to text messages. They can also use, if you're using the voice, if you're using a vishing, they may also try to record your voice and use it against you and try and impersonate you with that recording. So again, the best practice is just report it or delete it. Fun fact for you, how much do you think your social security number sells for on the dark web? Well, as it was once famously said on the famous show Price is Right, $1, Bob. So in honor of the great Bob Barker, you know, your social actually only goes for $1. And to back that up, this is derived from Experian, where they say your identity is a steal on the dark web. So if you see on here, your social security number sells for $1, but a couple other things I wanted to highlight. So a driver's license only sells for $20. And the highest paying would be your passport for the US, which ranges from $1,000 to $2,000. That's typically because they're harder to fake due to the security features in place. So I like to say, don't be quick to click. Never disclose your username and password to anyone, not even your financial institution. So here at First Financial, we don't even keep your password for your online banking on file with us. We don't want to know it. We don't want others to know it. And so the whole point is that it's a unique password only you should know. Never make your password the same for multiple accounts. Reason being is you make it the same for all accounts. If it gets hacked, that hacker then has all of your accounts compromised versus just the one. The most important part of a secret password is the secret part. Please keep in mind, you should only know your password. You should not give it out. There's other methods of allowing somebody to assist you and help you with your accounts if you need financial help, other than giving out your username and password. And a big one is valid businesses will never require you to give your online username and password in order to conduct business. So one of the big scams we're talking about today is where companies will request they need your username and password in order to proceed with, say, funding a loan. There are other methods. They can use your account number and routing number. They do not need your online banking username and password in order to proceed. So to start us off into the scam types, we're going to talk about our romance scams, which typically leave your victim in debt and regret. So they all kind of follow the same premise where they'll profess their love quickly. They typically will claim they're from the US, but they're overseas for business or military service. They will then ask for money and then lure you off whatever dating site you're on. It's not secluded to dating sites alone. We have seen with any type of game or application that allows you to communicate with other individuals. So we've seen games where they're able to chat with the other player, and in that case, a scammer used it as a romance scam. Then they will often claim to need money for such things such as emergencies, hospital bills, or travel. And then they'll tell you they're planning to visit, but they always can't because of some type of emergency that pops up last minute. So a real life scenario with this of how a romance scam works and how it has affected individuals was one we saw here at First Financial using an obituary scam. So with this, our member's husband had passed away, and a longtime friend had posted their condolences on a message board on the funeral home site. This was a friend from high school, longtime friend that they hadn't really chatted in a while. The scammer that enrolled the obituaries looking and saw this. What they ended up doing was then creating a fake Facebook account in the name of that longtime high school friend in order to communicate with our member. So you might be asking yourself, why would a scammer be looking at obituaries? Well, when you really think about it, with the passing of a loved one, it's a major life change. So those life changes often prompt financial changes as well. These can be from selling a home, life insurance policies, moving funds from accounts, So there's a lot of money movement that goes on with life changes, such as the passing of a loved one. And unfortunately, these scammers, they have no heart and they like to take advantage of that and really try and steal everyone's money. So the scammer then created that account on Facebook and reached out to our member, introducing themselves as that old friend, impersonating them, and then introduced a new friend to the scenario that recently lost their wife as well. And then our members started communicating with that new friend. So they communicated and they developed this relationship over this common bond they had of a loss of a loved one. Unfortunately, after some time, the scammer then eventually asked our member for help in the form of sending money. They said, they were having living expenses and they were really struggling with finances due to that loss of a loved one that they just recently, created that bond over. And of course, our member, in the kindness of their heart, felt that they could help out. So they did, in fact, send the funds to the scammer and ended up losing in excess of $20,000. So ultimately, all romance scams leave the victim in debt and regret. It's because these scammers, they do not care. They have one motivation, and that's to get your money, and they will do it by any means necessary, even if it's going as far as using, the loss of a loved one as a way in. Then we move into our impersonation scams. So we like to say, try to verify. These are going to be your spoofing of a legitimate company. So when they impersonate a legit company, for example, BG&E, when they're saying, you receive a text message that your utilities will be cut off within the next hour, you've been late on your payments, you need to Zelle or Venmo the money out immediately in order for this not to happen. So they're acting as a legitimate company, telling you you need to pay right now, you send the funds, and then find out later down the road, unfortunately, it was a scammer. You have family member fraud. So there's two major types. There's grandparent scams. So these are going to be, your grandchild is in prison or injured and you need to wire money right now in order to help them, or you'll never hear from them again. They often use the puppy dog scam, where there's a puppy dog that either is in danger or is up for sale. And, in order to make that purchase, you need to wire the funds out. There's also elder abuse. This is a difficult one, and we put in red that 90% right there to really highlight how important it is that people understand 90% of elder abuse claims are committed by a family member. The reason being it's so high is it normally starts off with good intentions because family members are trusted. You know them your whole lives. You would think their intent is to help you out. And then the intent starts off that way. Typically bills are being paid on time, things are moving correctly, everything's good and fine. But then that family member starts skimming off the top. And what they'll do is they'll take $100 this month and then $100 next month. And then maybe they increase it to $1,000. They're thinking, it's for their service, so they could use the extra cash. Unfortunately, it is taking advantage of that elder member simply because of the fact that they didn't authorize you to withdraw those funds. You did it on your own report, and unfortunately, it does constitute as elder abuse. You have your car wrap scams. These are going to be where a company reaches out stating, they'll put their logo on your vehicle and you'll get paid. So often these come in the form of fraudulent checks, and what they'll do is they'll send it in the mail, say it's for the payment for the install, and your payment for the first couple months of having this logo on your car. You deposit a check, turns out it's a fraudulent check, but you didn't know that at the time. So you deposit the check, you put it in your account, you send them, they'll tell you, oh, we need you to send the money back to us, there was overpayment, and what they'll end up doing is that check, you send your legitimate money to the scammer, and that check ends up bouncing with the institution as a fraudulent check. At that point, takes your account negative due to the withdrawal of the item, and since you've sent the funds out already, your account then goes negative. You have a job and lender scam. So these are going to be where a job is offered or a lending opportunity is offered that is actually a scam. It can happen on legitimate websites such as Indeed, but they create fictitious profiles on there. Again, it follows the same premise as the car app. They'll mail you a check saying it's for purchasing of your home office equipment, or they'll get your online banking username and password, and they'll mobile deposit a fictitious check into your account, and you really don't take notice to the method of deposit, but notice that funds were deposited, which would make sense for if you were getting a loan. The key difference here is the method of deposit. Typically, these checks are scam or fraud checks involved in the scam, and most lending opportunities will happen by direct deposit using your account number and the institution's routing number. Then you have COVID-19 related fraud. So we nicknamed COVID-19 the scamdemic. It's the unofficial name for it, and the reason being is scammers took advantage of the opportunities that were presented because of the fact that people were losing jobs. They needed other source of income, so they were outsourcing. People needed help with finances, so they were outsourcing for lending opportunities with lower interest rates. So people became put in these situations that they needed funds. And then you have the government who gave out, COVID-19 benefit funds, and scammers then took people's stolen identities that they stole and falsified unemployment, and falsified, not receiving a benefit check, and they ended up scanning individuals that way as well. Then we have wire fraud. So we like to say, you buy, they lie. So I have up there are so many scams on the internet nowadays. Send me 1995, and I'll tell you how to avoid them. So these are common types of scams. You have your work from home. Again, this is where they present an opportunity for you to work from home. However, typically the payment comes to you prior to you even doing any work. They'll often tell you you're overpaid. You need to wire the money back to them. You have your investments. So these are going to be where you're investing in properties or in things such as cryptocurrency. Often they'll tell you that you need to wire the funds either as a down payment or a fee. Often they'll tell you that the wire needs to go to a cryptocurrency wallet or a cryptocurrency account, and often that is a scam as well. We've seen securing assets. So this is where they pose and impersonate a government official, a fraud department, some high-ranking individual that has credentials, and at that point, they'll tell you that they're going to act as the good guy. They're going to be helping you. There's been a hacker. He's been, we've been after him for years. He's gotten into your accounts, and you need to secure your assets. So if you send all your money to me, and we'll put it in a crypto wallet that's encrypted and secured, while we get this straightened out and we find this guy, and then when it's done and all done and said, I'll send you your money right back when everything's secured. Unfortunately, real life doesn't work that way. There's other ways to secure your assets and your accounts without having to send your funds to another individual. Again, this is another one of those scams. And we talked about romance scams. Wire method of how they receive their funds typically is because it's an international individual reaching out, wanting you to send it overseas. The main thing that has in common is that wires are like cash. When you send a wire out, it's treated in the institution world as cash. So when you send that, it's near impossible for the institution to recover any of those funds back. So wires should be treated with extreme caution and care. Make sure you know who you're sending your money out to. And now you have account takeover. I like to say keys, please. The reason being, your keys to your house. They unlock all the doors, right? It opens all access to every room in the house. Well, that's kind of how your online banking credentials work. When you give out those credentials, it's opening the doors to all the rooms of your finances. So there's three ways that it can occur. You have your account sellout. These are going to be where your individuals sell out their credentials in order to make a profit. They might no longer use the account. They may just need funds. So they give out their credentials because they're told by this false promise that, oh, they can claim fraud, or, oh, it won't affect you. In reality, it really does, because your name, your social are attached to those accounts, not the scammers. You have data phishing scenarios. So these are going to be links deployed under various pretenses. These are going to be like your antivirus, billing companies, prize winning. So your rich uncle in Spain, passed away and you inherited all of his gold. With these, I normally say it's too good to be true. It normally is. You have your antivirus. Those are going to be where you have a subscription that you never had, and they're telling you they debited your account for it. Call this number. Well, actually, it's a number to the scammer. And then we already touched on the billing company, so BG&E reaching out, saying they're going to cut off your electricity if you don't pay right now. You have your larger data compromises. So these are going to be like your email, credit, and other types of accounts compromised via past data breaches. So you have a recent one, which is Equifax credit reporting, Yahoo, and Facebook. These are where companies are getting hacked, and the scammers get into their system and are able to view all the information. And this includes the information that company may have stored for you. It could be something as simple as a credit card number, or it can be something more important, such as like your social security number and your name, your date of birth, your address. So they'll go through and they'll gather that information, and then they may attempt to use it to either impersonate you or to try and phish you and get your online banking. So to give some reference on how this actually works, if you remember with us here at First Financial, this may look familiar to you. This is our online banking. For those of you who are not members yet. So we created an online banking for Miss Robin Banks, and she's doing pretty well in life. She's got quite a bit of balance in her checking, so she's living good and fine. She logs into her computer one day and pops up on the screen. She has a Norton antivirus renewal service. It's debited her account $400, and it puts in there, hey, if you wish to cancel this or don't authorize the charge, please contact this number to cancel. So she knows, she doesn't have Norton virus. She uses another antivirus. So she obviously doesn't, wants to save that $400. So she calls the number, gets in contact with them, and it's actually the scammers posing as this company. What they'll do is they'll ask her to download a remote access program. A big one is AnyDesk. And what they'll do is they'll say, just as your IT department does, they'll gain access to your device. What they'll do is they'll black the screen out so you can't see what they're doing, and they'll tell you what they're doing, but it's not actually what they're doing on the device itself. They'll tell you they're refunding you, no worries, don't worry about it. You can't see anything until they re-show you the screen. This is what they'll show you. So if you look at her accounts, she's got some serious debt going on. So I did this actually myself. I went in and I changed the screen of what is displayed to your view. So these scammers are not actually changing anything about her finances. Ms. Robin Banks still has that $1 million in her account. The problem is what she's physically seeing with her eyes on a computer screen is not in reality what's actually happening, because scammers can go and they can alter the screen itself, but only what's displayed for that moment. If Miss Robin Banks were to log into her phone simultaneously, she would see that these balances of very negative balances are not accurate. Often what they're trying to do is back up their story they're going to tell you. So what they're going to do is they're going to say, hey, an error occurred. You need to go wire this money. I'm going to get fired. You need to do this right now to fix this. If this employee created this error, they should be able to fix this error. So it doesn't really add up why you as the member need to fix their error. The best practice, if this ever occurs to you, is turn off the device, have it looked at, and contact your institutions as soon as possible. The institution then can lock down your account until you get everything changed over and re-secured. Then you have your loan fraud. So with this, you typically see it's loan application fraud. With this, we see fictitious pay stubs being submitted, along with altered and fictitious identification. So if you think back to a couple slides ago where we discussed how much your social sells for on the dark web, so if I can buy your social security number for $1, and I can buy a fictitious ID for you for $20, and if I know the company you work for, all I have to do is create a fictitious pay stub. And now I have the 3 major keys that I need to submit a fictitious loan application under your name and under your social. So if it passes security and everything goes through because I was able to properly, create an identity theft loan application for you, and I get the funds, I'm going to take those funds and I'm going to run. Basically what happens is they take the funds, your name, your social is recording under that loan. They'll never make that first payment. So first payment defaults, they get the profit, but now you're stuck paying all the rent or all the debt that accrued on that loan because it's under your name. It's reporting under your social. A big one too is co-signing. I always like to say take caution when you co-sign for somebody on a loan. The reason is because you're fully responsible as a co-signer for all the debt. So scammers will often, if they can't fully pass security with a fake loan application, they may try and reach out and have you co-sign because they're not able to get a loan on their own and they need help. So when you co-sign for that individual, they're going to run with all the profit and you're going to be held responsible as they would be for the repaying the loan back. And then we have your peer-to-peer fraud. So I like to say, don't wait, validate. Peer-to-peer fraud is typically used as the form of payment with scams. The reason being is it's instantaneous. These scammers are getting their funds immediately and then ceasing communication completely. So some of the scams that they're using these in are your overpayment. This is where they reach out, they give you a check. Oh, we overpaid you. Can you send the overage, $400 via Zelle to us? Then that check bounces, and again, you're left with that negative balance. You have the immediate action required. So these are going to be your eviction or utilities being cut off unless you pay right now. BG&E, their payment, they never use Zelle as their form of payment, so why would they be starting now? Then you have your fines and penalties. So the IRS contacting you saying, hey, you haven't paid your taxes, you're accruing fines, we're going to do penalties unless you Zelle money right now. The last I checked, the IRS does not collect funds via Zelle. They have other methods, and to speak of it, they really never ever call you. It's more going to be in person for an audit, or it's going to be letters in the mail until you finally respond. Fraud department impersonation is a big one out there nowadays. So this is where the scammers are impersonating fraud departments, especially at institutions. They're saying, hey, we have this hacker notice on your account, we're trying to secure it. Can you verify this code to make sure this is you? What they're doing is they're actually using your credentials and prompting a multi-factor authentication code to authorize either online banking access to with a new device, or they're trying to get a transaction because they're already in your online banking and they're trying to approve, say, an electronic funds transfer. So they're going to tell you it's a verification code, but in reality, it's actually a multi-factor code to authorize something versus to verify you. And this can lead to your account takeovers. So when they have that, it's used to add a trusted device to your online banking. It's used to download remote access programs on your device so they can have control. And then that can often lead to account access or ransom. So when they have that device control, they're going to put it across that they have control of all your finances. And if you don't pay the ransom right now, then they're not going to give you access back. So when you try and click around on the screen, nothing happens. That's because they've taken access of the device you're on, but they haven't taken access of your online banking unless your username and password were given to them. We've even seen scammers go as far as enrolling people into programs, into device or into applications such as P2P, so Zelle, that the member has never used before. So they'll be helpful. Oh, I don't have Zelle. And they'll be like, no worries, I'll help you walk you through the process of enrolling for it. And they're doing everything and anything they can to get the money from you. And then we have check fraud. So something for nothing. So there's a couple ways that a method of deposit. So the first one we're going to discuss is in branch. Typically these checks are mailed or given to you in person. Unexpected checks if sent via the mail courier service may be fraudulent. So you want to know that these checks are, being expected. You were just settled a lawsuit, and you're expecting settlement funds from that. See, that would be a valid reason. But if an unexpected check comes in the mail saying your, rich uncle from Spain passed away, here's your side of the inheritance, and you're like, I didn't know I had a rich uncle in Spain, that might be a sign that it's a scam. Or especially if a check comes in the mail and it has instructions for you of how to deposit, what to do, who to contact. After you make the deposit, send a copy of the receipt to this Gmail account. Those are typically scams. They're not legitimate. So the reason people take these checks in branch is while it does have a higher risk, you have that branch teller that's physically looking at the item, they get a faster availability out of it. So their scammers want that money as quick as possible, so they may advise you to go in branch deposit it, hoping that it passes by a new employee, or somebody doesn't take a good look at the check and it gets through. So that way you get faster available funds, faster way to send them their money. And like I said, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. Then you have your ATM deposits. These again are going to be your mailed checks, your in-person checks, and then a third-party check. Third-party checks, for those of you who don't know, it's a check that's not payable to an account owner. So if Joe gives John a check payable to Joe, but he signs it off to John, that would be constituted as a third party because the check is payable to John, the check is payable to Joe, but it was given to John to deposit in John's account. A lot of times these are stolen checks that have already been deposited and were being discarded, but not shredded. And the scammers, again, they went like dumpster diving, found the check, and then trying to use that against an individual in a scam who, that individual thinks it's legitimate funds. It's being signed over to me, but little did they know it's the scammer who actually stole that item. They may tell you to visit the ATM, or they may go to the ATM themselves. And the reason being is because it avoids human scrutiny. It's just a machine, looking at information of a check deposit. It's not a human being physically looking at the item. With that, you can also have card compromises. So if you see on this screen a green bubble around the ATM where the individual is putting that card into the machine, so that is actually an anti-card skimmer device that's actually seen on a lot of smart ATM nowadays. So card skimming is where a device is put over top of where you would put your card, insert your card. It can happen anywhere, but typically you see them over around gas stations. Reason being is, gas pumps, they don't have an individual standing there looking at everybody every second of the day. So scammers can often go undetected by putting a skimmer over top of where you would insert your card. So when you go to put your card through, the skimmer pulls all the data, all your personal data off of that card, including your name, maybe address, the full card number, anything like that, and then it goes into the actual machine. So you're unknowing that your card's being skimmed because the transactions that you're trying to do actually go through. You can get your gas. However, the skimmer pulled all your information first. This way they can then go back and they can either use your information to make online purchases, or they may attempt to counterfeit that card and use it to withdraw funds at another ATM. You also have card sellout. So this is where individuals are selling their card, either the information or the physical card itself, in order to make a profit. It's into an account they don't use anymore, or they're told, hey, you can claim it as fraud, you'll get all your money back and we both win. That's actually not the case. You compromised your account, you may not be entitled to get funds back. Cards can be stolen, and then individuals who have your information, scammers that have your information, may attempt to activate the card and use it for purchases. And then you have bill payments. And when I talk about bill payments, I'm referring to, when you're out at dinner that Friday night, you hand the waitress or waiter your card, they take it back, they run it, and they charge it. You don't know what that individual is doing with that card. They could be a scammer, they could be taking pictures of it, and then selling it out. We hope that, individuals have integrity, and do not do that in the service industry especially. But it does happen, unfortunately, and people do some scamming on the side to try and take advantage of their position, such as having access to individual cards as they come through. So the thing I always like to say is always safeguard your card, always safeguard your PIN. Don't disclose it to anyone, and if a compromise or card is ever lost, please notify your institution as soon as possible. You have check fraud with mobile deposits. So this is a big one with email checks and scams, such as like a job scam. So they'll have you, apply for this job. They'll email you the check, tell you to mobilely deposit it using your device. Again, this avoids that human scrutiny because it's, you as the member making the deposit. When you make that deposit, you may get immediately available funds off of it. Reason being is because some institutions, such as ours, take checks on good faith. So it's good faith that you know where that check is coming from. You have reason to believe it's valid. There's no concerns of fraud on your side, so we then give you immediately available funds to say, it's good faith. However, if you spend those immediately available funds and that check does get returned, you are then held responsible for the negative balance. The reason being is because you didn't allow that time for that check to clear. You deposited it, and at that point, you want to make sure that when you do deposit funds, that you know the validity of those. You can always contact the issuer of the check to verify the information is correct. But don't worry, you're not in it alone. So if you bank with First Financial or haven't started banking with us yet, we've created interstitials in place to help alert you of potential fraud. So you might be asking, what is an interstitial? Well, it's just a fancy term for a pop-up disclosure. I like to say, when in doubt, back out. So these are two examples with First Financial. We have one for mobile deposit, and we have one for Zelle as well. So the one for Zelle states, when using Zelle to pay someone, first ask yourself these questions. Do I know and trust this person? Does anything seem suspicious about the payment I am making? So the reason being is that First Financial, safety is a top priority. Help us keep your money safe by only using Zelle to pay those you trust. Never register for Zelle under someone else's direction. So we do help you as our members to try and combat the fraud because we know these scammers can be very convincing. So to kind of put some numbers in perspective of how COVID was really a big part of this, is pre-COVID and the scamdemic ID theft reports. So the one to the left is pre-COVID-19, so back in 2019, actually when I started with First Financial. So when you see 3.5 million reports were filed, and identity theft was the number 2 reason for those reports, with imposter scams being the number 1. There was $2.4 billion in total fraud losses, and about 1 in 10 people lost money in reported imposter scams. Then COVID hit, and now you have the scamdemic. Scammers are vigorously taking advantage of people. They are scamming 24/7. Sometimes the same person's trying to be scammed multiple times. Now you jump into 5.9 million reports filed, and identity theft became the number 1 reason. We increased to $6.1 billion in total fraud losses, and it actually 1 in 5 people lost money in an imposter scam. So you can really see, especially when you look at how much fraud losses occurred, $2.4 billion in fraud losses in 2019 pre-COVID, and then you jump all the way up to $6.1 billion in 2021 during the scamdemic. So you can really see how these scammers were vigorously going after people with stolen identities, scamming individuals. They really took advantage of it. It's a big question everybody wants to know: who is responsible when these things happen? So the consumer responsibility versus the financial institution's responsibility. The unfortunate answer is it's a case-by-case scenario. There is no one direct answer that applies to everything. The reason being because every situation is different. No fraud is identical. Each situation is unique, and requires review as there are regulations that protect you as the consumer, and there's regulations that protect us as the institution. So while I can't give a full straight answer of who is responsible, just know every scenario, every case is thoroughly reviewed and investigated, and then that helps determine what regulations take part. Are there regulations that are protecting the consumer, or are there regulations that are protecting the institution? And that's how it plays into who is ending up responsible for paying back any balances. So we have fraud prevention. So what can you do? Be mindful of what information you share. Monitor your accounts and statements. Personally, I monitor my online banking every day, and I just check to make sure there's nothing that's being charged to my account that I don't know about. Be alert when conducting card transactions. Keep a lookout for those card skimmers. Keep your devices up to date with the latest software updates. This helps protect your device from being hacked or malicious malware being installed. Have your computer's devices checked for malware, ransomware, or viruses. So, if you ever do have scenarios where you were told to download a remote access program, it turns out to be a scam, you want to get that device checked out by professionals and make sure you tell them, hey, I had a remote access program. The reason being is it's a legitimate program that's used by legitimate companies for legitimate reasons. However, scammers have found this and now have taken advantage of it. So it doesn't really classify as a malware, ransomware, or virus because it's a legitimate program, but scammers are using it maliciously. So I tend to say remove those unless you're actually using it for business purpose or have a legitimate purpose that you need it in life. But if you don't, remove it. It takes out that potential of somebody using it maliciously against you. Remove or review web links to ensure you're not being phished. So you want to enter your information on known and trusted sites. If you're going to Google, make sure you typed in Google and not Goggle. Those sites, they'll change one little word, make it look like the legitimate website, but in factuality, it's not. And don't click pop-ups. I always say pop-ups, they can be a little bit out there sometimes with whether or not they're legit. So you can always go and visit the website. Typically, if it is legit, the pop-up will be on the, in an article or a tab listed on the main website. You don't need to get there by clicking the pop-up itself. And protect and securely store or destroy your records with your information. You have a letter in the mail with your name and address or personal information, redact the information, shred it. Do whatever you can to protect your information because those scammers will go through the dumpsters. They'll look through your garbage. They'll get that information any way they can. So say you've taken all your preventative measures and, unfortunately you did fall victim to a scam. The scammer is very convincing. What can you do after? So this is First Financial's suggested action plan. Other institutions may have a variance of this. So this is just what we at First Financial offer as a plan for what to do after your identity has been stolen or after you've been scammed. So you want to change all your account numbers. This includes your online banking credentials and not just with First Financial. We also suggest changing them for all your institutions. Set up e-alerts, push notifications, and a verbal password. This would be, so you can be alerted for activity when it occurs on your account. And that way you're in that moment notified and can review and determine whether that was authorized or if somebody's trying to steal your money. Additionally, a verbal password on your account. And this way, if a scammer has your personal information, such as name, address, date of birth, social, they don't know that verbal password because you're going to create it into unique, only you should know it. So when they call in and they try to impersonate you with all your information, even though they know it, they don't know that verbal password, can't get through the security. You want to place a check systems freeze and alerts on your credit file. So again, it's Equifax, Experian, TransUnion are the three big ones. So what that does is it freezes your credit from being pulled without your knowledge and authorization. Even if I try and, to use that fictitious pay stub, that fictitious ID, and your, stolen social security number to submit for a loan app, When they go to pull your credit, if it has a freeze on there, it will notify the institution or wherever you're getting that loan from that they cannot pull your credit due to a freeze. Protects you and protects your accounts from being compromised in the sense of somebody being able to try and steal your identity and open up accounts or open up lines of credit without you knowing. If you do have a freeze on your credit, please keep in mind, if you do legitimately need to pull your credit, you just have to unfreeze it temporarily so that the company can pull it. You can obtain your free credit file with annualcreditreport.com. You can file a complaint at ic3.gov, which is the FBI Internet Crime Complaint Center. We also suggest filing a police report, and we also suggest to watch your mail for any suspicious documents. Typically, if they have your address, they're going to try and phish you by sending you either fake checks, or they'll try and send you documents to have you fill them out and send them back. They might have stolen your information that way. Change your email address. I know I'm attached to my email personally, so it'd be a struggle for me. But sometimes it is the best thing to do. Just start with a fresh slate. Start with a new email, update everything. But if that's not, the case, just change the password. You don't want to have the scammer having access to your email, because a lot of times that's where multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication can be addressed to. And if they have access to your email, then they can bypass that extra layer of security for your accounts. So I know that's a lot, but a big one is the Federal Trade Commission at ftc.gov. This is kind of like your one-stop station. So you can get your free credit report. You can report fraud. You can report identity theft. You can either put a public comment, be on the register for do not call list, or file a complaint. Basically, it is a one-stop. So I do think the ftc.gov is one of the best resources out there, even if you just want to protect your account and get some additional security or information. So there's 5 things I could ask that you take away from today. It pays to stop and think. So remember, these scammers out there, they're going to try and get your money as quick as possible. So 5 things to take away. Never disclose your security details. You legitimate companies don't need those in order to conduct business. Excuse me. Don't assume an email, text, or phone call is genuine. So remember, a lot of those forms of communication, the scammers are trying to impersonate a legitimate business and trying to get your money because they cause a panic, they cause a haste, they cause some problem or issue and you need to resolve right now. Which falls into don't be rushed. These are your finances. These are your life. You're the one in control, not the scammer. So, don't be rushed. They're going to create that haste so you stop thinking about what you're doing and you just do what they want. But if you stop and think, you might see the red flags that show, hey, this is a scam. Listen to your instincts. I always say, trust your gut. Typically, it'll be right and lead you down the right path. And number 5, stay in control. Like I said, these are your finances. This is your life. No one else gets to tell you how to run it. So if a scammer is out there or somebody impersonating someone trying to get your money, make sure you're in control of the conversation. Make sure you're in control of your finances. Don't let them run how things go for you. So this is something we offer to both members and non-members. If you're not a member yet, you can still go to our website. You can still look at this. So on our website, we have a security center that we have is fraud protection. So protecting your account is a priority for First Financial. Whether you bank in person, online, or mobile device, your personal data could be vulnerable to identity theft and other attacks. So with that, if you were to visit our website, firstfinancial.org, and then follow the tabs and prompts to our security center, fraud protection, basically we put out there for the public general information. So it could be anywhere from current scams that we're seeing. It could be the generic scams, such as the car app scam, how they operate, what they're doing, what to look for, and ways that you can protect your identity, your finances, and your life. And even tells you, what to do. What do I do if I've experienced fraud or I've experienced identity theft? So it's a great resource. I do encourage everyone to go out there and take a look yourselves. And that is all I had for today. I wanted to thank everybody for coming, and I appreciate everybody's time. I know it was a little bit of a lengthy presentation, but it is a lot of information. I hope I didn't scare anybody too much. I do know it is a scary topic to discuss, especially with how concerning these scammers can really be. So I do appreciate you all coming and enjoying our presentation. I hope everybody did enjoy it, and I thank you for your time. Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.